Hi, this is Bob Roth, Managing Partner and Co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. Since 1994, we have been providing in-home supportive care services for our older adult population right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Since 2014, we've been bringing you a show on Money Radio called Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. In case you miss our show that airs every Friday at noon, you can catch it right here on our podcast called Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. So when you get a chance, listen in and enjoy the show.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. And it must be Friday. We coming at you live every single Friday right here at Money Radio Studios, right here in the Air Park at 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. We're also coming at you via podcast as well. If this is the first time you're tuning into our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. How do they do that? They do that by not listening to me, but these extraordinary guests that I get to come on to the show. And today is no different. I am really excited. We're coming at you on December 29th. This is the last show of 2023. Hard to believe that we are about ready to start 24. But I couldn't think of a better guest to have on the show than somebody that I've grown to have a professional as well as a personal relationship with, as well as a partnership that we have formed at Cypress Home Care Solutions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you, our listeners, to Jenna Morgenstern Gaines. She is with a company called Pocket RN. She is the CEO and co-founder. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob. Just really grateful to be here and grateful for our partnership.
Well, I'm grateful as well. And you have an incredible company. And for us, as a home care provider, providing in-home supportive care services, as you know, and our listeners know, we are a non-medical in-home supportive care service company. So we don't do anything clinically, and Pocket RN does. And it's really nice to have this partnership because literally, I love the name, and I'm going to ask you how we came up with the name, but literally, our caregivers and our clients and their families will have access to clinical care right there in their pocket.
100%, Bob. It's really a beautiful marriage because your professional caregivers and family caregivers are there on the ground, and they're really there for that day-to-day care, companionship, support, assistance with activities of daily living. And our nurses are there for the week-to-week care, the month-to-month care that can support the patient, the loved one, and everybody that surrounds them, their family members, their caregivers, and their care team and more.
100%. And every time our clients do come home from an acute or post-acute setting, they're usually discharge orders. Yep. And they're usually, obviously what we refer to as activities of daily living orders, but they're also orders as it relates to clinical stuff. And it's really hard for our listeners to hear this. It's hard for older adults to get out to see their doctors. Yep. I mean, you're talking about someone 70s, 80s, 90s, even hundreds, to get them to move when they have maybe mobility issues, or maybe they're dealing with some type of disease that they're dealing with, heart issues. The fact that you can utilize technology and bring that into the home and have it there available at the time of need is really incredible.
Totally. That accessibility is a huge part of what's missing in care today. And, we all know the stories, right? I mean, it's taking 8-9 months for patients just to get an appointment with the specialist nowadays. And, when you layer that on top of all the mobility issues and the desire to be at home, it makes perfect sense to be able to use technology in this area to get people that kind of care when they need it and when they want it.
And the follow-up piece too.
Yeah.
I mean, because let's face it, when you do have a situation where somebody has been hospitalized and they are coming home, there are usually follow-up orders and and progress orders, and that's hard to do for older adults, and it's hard to do for family members that are trying to do that from afar.
Yeah.
But to have a professional home care agency with the partnership with Pocket RN gives you that extra layer of protection, gives you that extra layer of comfort, gives you that extra layer of security to know that those orders that have been given are being followed. Somebody is tracking those. Someone is measuring, whether it be monitoring blood pressure, monitoring blood sugar or pulse ox. All of those things are being monitored by a clinician, not a non-medical home care company.
100%. It's that peace of mind.
It is. It is. So, this is a quick show. It goes really fast, Jenna. So there are 4 segments, and each one's about 10 minutes long. So I want to do a deep dive into Pocket RN, but I also want to do a deeper dive into you and how you got this started.
Yeah.
Because I'm fascinated, because you are my oldest daughter's age, and you've done so much in such a short time. And, if you could indulge me and our listeners by giving us a little bit about your background and how you got to Pocket RN.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a circuitous but extremely rewarding path, Bob. And I'm just very grateful for all the opportunities I've had in my lifetime. And when we've talked in the past, I think a lot of my kind of story and journey starts way back growing up in Boston, Massachusetts. And in high school, I had the unique opportunity to go and live in China and do a semester there where I was studying and learning Chinese. And that was a real pivotal moment in my life, because I think I realized there was so much that I could learn from other cultures and from spending time outside of where I had primarily grown up. And that led me to actually go to college outside the country as well. So I went to college in Australia, which was amazing. I loved it. I did not ride a kangaroo to school, but I had a great time.
What university did you go to?
University of Melbourne.
And do they have like a mascot? What is it? It's not like the artichoke here.
Yeah,
it's
no, they
Scottsdale Community College.
Yeah.
It's the kangaroo. No,
they don't have a great mascot. To be honest, it's sort of the statue-esque figure. It's almost like the Statue of Liberty.
There you
and
go.
so it's not a great mascot, but you can envision a wallaby or a kangaroo, and that puts us in the setting of being in Melbourne, Australia.
I
And
love it.
loved my time there. It was amazing, and that actually is what ended up getting me my very first job back in Washington, D.C. after I graduated from college, where I worked for a consulting firm in the policy space led by Madeleine Albright.
Wow.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, she was Secretary of State.
Yes.
And served in a very important time in this country's history.
100%. Yeah. And she's the first female Secretary of State, extremely inspiring person, and a huge focus at that time for me, as the first hire on the healthcare practice at her firm, was on the caregiving crisis in the U.S. So I was actually working with pharmaceutical companies, healthcare providers, policymakers to try and form public-private partnerships that particularly supported the sandwich generation of women, caring for their aging adult parents and their young kids. And I was doing that, before it was sexy. And
Right.
Bob, I know you were doing it way before it was sexy, but really focusing on that role of the family caregiver. And for me, that was becoming extremely personally important too, because I was becoming really the primary family caregiver for my mom as she went through her own patient journey. And, as a younger person coming into that, I really just saw firsthand how, as a non-clinician, it is hard to help a loved one age gracefully at home. And there are so many questions and so much anxiety that comes with it, and really just needing that peace of mind that can come from having the support of home care, of a home health aide, and the support of a clinician such as a nurse. I've relied on my neighbors, my aunts, all nurses to help us in so many ways over time.
Wow. So you were there firsthand experiencing that.
Yeah, it was. It's in many ways I'm grateful
Right.
for it, because you become close in new ways, and you learn a lot that I can now help others with who I love.
My story's not so dissimilar. Mine was with my mom as well.
Yeah.
So something about moms,
Yeah.
they're really special, but also the personal journey.
Yeah.
So take me through this. So Madeline Albright, you were working with her office, really working with family caregivers. What happens next?
Yeah. So, I loved my time there, loved the work, but it felt like we were kind of operating at the 40,000 foot level, at the policy level, working with major corporations. But I really wanted to have that experience firsthand of helping patients and their families and doing it in a more innovative way, using new technology, digital health. And so I left my old job at the Albright Group and went to Stanford to do my MBA. And I was also doing a master's in policy at Hopkins at the time. But while I was at Stanford, I was part of what's called the biodesign program there, which brings together graduate students from across the university to address unmet medical needs. And that's actually where I met my co-founder, Sam Thomas, who was a CNA working in the home of a man who had spinal muscular atrophy overnight, and then became an MD, and where I met the other original founding members of our team, and we came together to come up with the concept for Pocket RN and solve real problems.
Wow. You know what? You've lived an incredible life for such a young person, but the experience is really what propelled you to doing what you're doing.
Totally, 100%.
So you can hear a little bit of the Who in your ears, right? So, I mean, like I said, they go really, really fast. So when we come back after this break, I want to do a deeper dive into Pocket RN and where you guys are at today and where do you see it going into the future?
Sounds great.
You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I've got Jenna Morgenstern Gaines here in the studio. She's the co-founder and CEO of Pocket RN. Stick around. We got 3 more segments. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I got Jenna Morgenstern Gaines here in the studio with me. She is the co-founder and CEO of Pocket RN. We're on our second segment, so if you missed our first one, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button right below its radio show. You'll catch this one and many, many more. So in that first segment, we talked just briefly about Pocket RN, but we really did a deeper dive into Jenna Morgenstern Gaines and really your background. And gosh, I mean, Australia, China, living in the Bay Area. You now live in Washington, D.C., back in Washington after doing your work with Albright Consulting.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Pocket RN. So you talked about it at the very, very end of the first segment.
Yes.
Where you met your business partner, Sam, who was a CNA at the time, who's now an MD.
Yep.
And you have other people that came aboard through your graduate studies there at Stanford. Can you bring us up to speed from there? Absolutely.
So our group, as you mentioned, Bob, we started out as a team at Stanford Biodesign, and what we really saw, which is going to be very familiar to your audience and your listeners, is that we're facing an unprecedented crisis in care today for really 2 reasons. There are 2 converging mega trends that are making care really, really hard today, and one is just that our aging population is growing rapidly. Their needs are growing. They've got an increasing number of chronic comorbidities and acute episodes, and care is really shifting to the home. And we haven't really built the infrastructure yet around that holistically to deliver clinical care in the home. Home care has been providing care to the home forever, but we really need to shift that clinical care into the home as well. So that's one trend. And the second trend is really around the nursing workforce and really the healthcare workforce writ large. Our focus is on the nursing piece, which today is our most trusted profession in the country, and rightfully so, feeling burnt out, undervalued, unheard, and leaving the workforce in droves. And so we really saw these 2 major problems converging and saw an opportunity to really close that gap between home and healthcare by using technology, new processes, new infrastructure in order to enable and empower our distributed network of 500 nurses across the country to help patients and families get that ongoing, continuous, life-saving care that they need when and where they want it. And that's really how we started Pocket RN. And today we serve different customers and partners across the country. We work with home care organizations, home health organizations, health systems, assisted living facilities, payers, and more.
So when did you exactly incorporate, get started?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because I know you guys are new. I just don't know how new. I think you started right during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Nice time to start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hit the moment at the right time. So we're almost approaching our official 3rd birthday now.
And when is your birthday?
January 7th, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, January 7th is the day that we incorporated almost
3 years
ago now.
Wow.
Yep. So
exciting.
yeah, we're getting close. Happy almost New Year. So anyway, we had started sort of germinating the idea and the concept right when the pandemic got started. And, we actually got together as a team and we were doing a hackathon, and we interviewed hundreds of patients, families, and nurses to understand what their needs were. And after that process, it really felt like we had a responsibility to start the company even more than, just an idea. It felt like it was such a need that we needed to fill.
No doubt. You said something about nurses being the most trusted profession out there. And there's data that supports that. I mean, patients trust nurses more than they trust doctors.
Yes.
And rightfully so, because the nurses are right there on the ground floor and they see everything.
Totally. I mean, it's 21 years running now that nurses have been voted the most trusted profession in the country. And that trust, which is something well at Cypress, Bob, that trust is so foundational to actually getting patients and families the care they need. When you have that trusted relationship, you reach out to people when you have a problem and when you need support. You give them more information about your care needs. I've seen it time and time again that our nurses are able to, extract more information in their conversations with patients and their family members that they often won't tell their doctors, that they've, been diagnosed with CHF or diabetes. They keep those things close to the chest because they're hard to talk about. And nurses have that foundational trust that goes such a long way in care.
So true. So true. So in full disclosure to our audience, I know I've shared this before. We have formed a partnership. We, meaning Cypress Home Care, Pocket RN, and Navan, which is an online training partnership, or online training company, educational company, e-learning company. The three of us came together for a grant with our state's Medicaid access here in town, and they were looking for a demonstration grant showing innovation, and we are targeting family caregivers, which makes so much sense. And I want our listeners to visualize this, because the Medicaid population has so many family members. Thanks to the waiver program, allows family members to care for loved ones. But the family members aren't equipped with the tools that they need to care for their loved ones. And what do I mean by tools? They don't have necessarily the skill sets. And then their loved one is going through their journey of life. As their needs progress, they don't have the luxury of going somewhere to get trained because they can't leave their loved one. But utilizing technology, as we've talked about, and utilizing devices, whether it be a phone or a iPad or an iPad type, they can connect with the online training platform and learn the skill sets to take care of their loved one. But also when there's a change in condition. And if there's a follow-up from an acute stay or post-acute stay too, there's going to be clinical assistance. And that's where Pocket RN comes in. And literally, the nurse is in your pocket.
Yeah.
Literally, so our client, our listeners can visualize this. Literally, I'm having a hard time with some of the words today. It's Friday. It's almost the end of the year.
It's the end of the year, Bob. Yeah, we're resetting, right?
Right. So visually, they can bring a nurse into their home and describe what's going on with their loved one.
Yeah.
Which I think is a beautiful thing, because let's face it, home is the most desired place they want to be.
Yep.
It's the least expensive place to be. So when the state's Medicaid is thinking about embracing this grant that we have done, this demonstration grant, we are trying to show what we refer to as value-based. So we are going to improve the outcomes so that they don't have to take a trip to the ER or urgent care or make a hospital visit. We can intervene, and the nurse can prescribe whatever medication or whatever, thing that needs to be followed for that patient to be able to remain in their home.
Absolutely.
Did I do a good job of visualizing that?
You did a great job. I have it in my mind's eye, Bob. Mind's eye.
So here we are. We're a couple months into it. This grant expires at the end of September, and we're hoping to show and demonstrate to our state's Medicaid program that this works, that fee-for-service is a thing of the past. Payments to providers like us should be on outcomes, value-based, and showing that we can deliver in the home setting. And Pocket RN is a very big instrumental part of that, as is the online training platform.
Absolutely.
Got a little Steely Dan taking us out. It's halftime here, Jenna.
Amazing. Halftime. 50-yard line.
There you go. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I got Jenna Morgenstern Gaines here in the studio from Pocket RN. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Amazing.
I hope you're enjoying the show. This is your host, Bob Roth, managing partner and co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. If you have any questions about the topics that are discussed during the show, visit us online at cypresshomecare.com or give us a call at 602-264-8009. We are entering now the second half of our show, so stay tuned for more helpful information to assist you with your aging loved ones.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our third segment, second half of our program. I've got Jenna Morgenstern Gaines here in the studio with me. She is the co-founder and CEO of Pocket RN. If you missed our first half, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button right below its radio show. You'll catch this one and many, many more. So, Jenna, we were talking about our partnership at the end of this second segment, and really, I'm so excited to see where we come out on October 1st, and really showing to our state's Medicaid that this type of model, delivering in the home for the family members, a telehealth solution like Pocket RN, and an online training solution like Navan is really the solution. And of course, Cypress and the in-home supportive care services.
Likewise.
So you got started, you got your third birthday coming up like in a week.
Yeah.
And you have gained a lot of traction, and I would love for you to share with our listeners how this thing has just taken off.
Yeah, it's grown and evolved significantly in the last few years. In some ways, it feels like it's been 30 years, and not 3.
Well, when you do a startup, every year's like 10 years.
Exactly, yeah, another decade on your life. It's been just wonderful and so fulfilling, though, and we've really come a long way. So we started off at Stanford Healthcare, where we ran actually a clinical trial to demonstrate some of the things that we were talking about at the end of the last segment, Bob, just the potential impact on these value-based outcomes. The fact that collectively we could reduce emergency department visits, reduce admissions to the hospital, saved staffing time, improve experience and engagement. And from there, we really went to market. And now we are serving over 3,000 patients across the country. We've got 500 nurses.
500?
Yeah.
How do you find these nurses?
It's been interesting, Bob. We have spent $0 marketing and recruiting to nurses since our very first day as a company. And in large part, that's because nurses are, at this point, really excited to have opportunities to work virtually, remotely, flexibly, given the real challenges that they face in other parts of the ecosystem. And so it's really drawn a lot of nurses into our orbit. At the same time, we're really building a nurse-led care delivery model that puts the nurse at the center and recognizes that the nurse is the glue. And, there's a reason that we say, nurse you back to health, not doctor you back to health, right? And
I like that.
Yeah, and that recognition of the nurse being at the center, I think that is what has ultimately kept our nurses really excited and engaged about working on Pocket RN. And so we've got this phenomenal network of nurses that empowers every single thing that we do. And we find them from all over. They come from hospitals, they come from our network, they come from home care. They've got amazing backgrounds, very specialized, some that have worked in a number of different settings and across the country. So our nurses are phenomenal.
So are you limited in your geographies?
Great question. So our nursing workforce actually covers all 50 states.
Fantastic.
There's a really unique thing that many people don't know about called the Nursing Licensure Compact in the U.S., which allows nurses to have multi-state licenses, and they can practice in 40 plus different states. And so it allows us to get great coverage across the country. We are bigger in certain states than others. Here in Arizona, we've had a lot of traction and a lot of exciting work with Cypress and others, and have a few other geographies that are kind of hubs for us as well.
Oh, nice. And certainly, people should know that, especially with the compact, there's such a thing called traveling nurses, and that gives nurses the ability to travel from state to state and do the work that they do. And also, Jenna, I got to imagine, we, meaning the general public, read and heard about the nurses during COVID and this pandemic, and many of them got burnt out.
Yeah.
And many of them left the acute setting, and I would imagine many of them showed up at your door and
Definitely.
said, this is a much better and desired outcome because I don't have to put myself at risk, and I get to spend more time with the patients.
Absolutely. And build those long-term relationships with patients and families. And, what we've seen is a lot of nurses have sort of flocked to Pocket RN because of burnout, because of the issues, working in a hospital today or a health system. And we've also grown the pie. So a lot of our nurses are also nurses who had left the workforce previously to raise a family, or because they had a debilitating injury, or because they were retiring. And this is a way to bring more nurses back into the workforce and do what they love, because they can do it from home. They don't need to work 3 12-hour shifts on a hospital floor. So that's been really interesting to see how that pie has grown.
No, it really has. And you used the word, over the 3 years you've evolved.
Yeah.
And, you've obviously, and I don't like the word pivot because that's
Sure.
kind of a techie word.
Sure.
And we're in healthcare, and I so appreciate the evolve and evolution. And do you think you've got the model down now, or do you think you think it needs further tweaking? Obviously, you've hit some roadblocks, and you learn, and then you move on.
Yeah. I think we will always evolve because we are continuously learning and trying to improve. But one thing that we've really got down now that we didn't have at the beginning is what we call our virtual nurse for life model. And what we recognized as we started delivering this care is that the needs, healthcare needs, they don't happen once you get sick and you're in the hospital. They happen in all the little moments day to day. And you really need to have someone you can rely on and trust to ask questions, to help you dress a wound in the moment, to help you understand how your new medication is affecting you, to share things, how you're being affected emotionally, the depression, the anxiety that you face as you go through this journey as a patient or as a family caregiver. And so having a virtual nurse for life who's in your corner, who knows you, who has that trusted relationship, it's the same nurse over and over again that you meet with and that you can reach out to. And they're, in many ways part of the family, similar to how, at Cypress, the professional caregivers become part of the family too.
Well, the nice thing, and for us, because we've also evolved in our relationship with Pocket RN. So not only are we offering it to the Medicaid population, but we're offering it to the private pay population as well. And the nice thing is like you said, nurse for life. You've got a nurse that you can call on at any time. And, for many of our older adults who are living here alone, which, by the way, 1/3 of our population, 65 and older, lives home alone. Yeah. And it's predicted between 2040 and 2050 that's going to raise up to close to 50%, which is a scary thought. Yeah. But to have literally a nurse at your pocket, one that you've had for life, to be able to go with you to the doctors. And they don't physically get in the cart with you, But you dial them up, and they can be in the exam room with the doctor, asking questions, taking notes, and certainly making sure whatever the care plan that doctor is prescribing can be followed up on.
Exactly, exactly. Nurses, doctors are forming the care plan often, and nurses are the ones who really execute on it. And that's huge. They can be there with you in those moments at those doctor's appointments, be your care partner, be by your side, walking with you through this journey, and be there on a proactive basis just to check in every week or every other week and see how you're doing and what's changed.
So I don't want our listeners to think that you just dial up a nurse in case of emergency. Yeah. It's like having a co-pilot with you, walking this journey of life with you, which is really, really nice. So, as we end this third segment, my question to you is, look, we are B2B, I'm a business, you're a business, and I'm offering it to my clientele. Are you doing any B2C? And can we like promote you to our listeners, and can they sign up with you directly and they don't have to come in through me?
Great question. So the vision is to really truly put a nurse in everyone's pocket. Today we operate primarily through a provider, a home care agency, a payer. In California, we have a D2C offering where patients and families can sign up directly with our services. And the vision is to have that all across the country in the not too distant future.
Yeah, because I see the great opportunity. I mean, really, rather than relying on a family member that's a clinician or, hoping that you got all the information right, you've got that pocket clinician right there at your side.
Absolutely. The co-pilot. I love it.
I love it too. Well, as you can hear, we got more music. 3 down.
Amazing.
Jenna, I told you it goes really fast. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I've got Jenna Morgenstern Gaines here in the studio with me. She's with Pocket RN. One more segment. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our 4th segment. I got Jenna Morgenstern Gaines here in the studio with me. She is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Pocket RN. If you missed the first 3 segments, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button right below its radio show, and you'll catch this one and many, many more. So, Jenna, we've covered a lot of things. So first and foremost, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you? First of all, I can read your website. It's pocketrn.com. That's pretty easy.
Yep.
But if they wanted to contact you, Jenna, what would be the best way to contact you?
Feel free to email me, Jenna, Jenna, at pocketrn.com.
That's pretty simple and pretty easy. Well, it's interesting. We talked about the grant, and there's another grant that's up right now. Yep. So round 2 is up through the state of Arizona, and if anybody's interested, they should probably reach out to you and talk about that. And I'm talking mainly providers that want to get in on this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we're here at the end of the year, and your 3rd birthday's coming up.
Yeah.
What do you see in the future? What is your 3 to 5 year plan? In terms of rolling this thing out? I want more people to find out about it. 500 nurses isn't enough. It needs to be 50,000 nurses.
Yes, absolutely.
And would you say 2,000 patients?
About 3,000.
3,000 patients. It needs to be about 300,000. How do we get this out?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
so what's part of the plan?
Yeah. So I love that question, Bob, because it dovetails nicely with what we're talking about at the end of the 3rd segment, which is just how do we get Pocket RN in more people's pockets, right? And so in the next 3 to 5 years, we really have a couple key goals. So as you mentioned, we've got 500 nurses today. We want to have thousands of nurses on the platform and really be completely enabling them and empowering them to drive these relationships longitudinally with patients and their families. But even beyond the number of nurses, we really want to be recognized as a best-in-class employer and place to work for those nurses that hears them, that listens to them, that puts them at the center of care. And that community that we can build with our nursing network, if we don't do that, then, we don't have a company. And that is
Right.
a really important goal for us. And then on the other side, getting in the pockets of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients and their families, and really their family caregivers, which is why our partnership is so exciting, because
Right.
this is really a peace of mind opportunity and an avenue for the family members. What I think I always, like to go back to is the patient stories that we see, every day on our platform, and how can we take those and expand them to so many more people who really need these services. So, we've got one patient on the platform who came to us with a variety of different clinical challenges. They had, almost everything under the sun: diabetes, hypertension, COPD. They had mental and behavioral health challenges, depression, anxiety, ADHD.
Checked all the boxes.
All the boxes. Lived in supportive housing, and really they were effectively alone. Didn't really have anybody around them, and so. We got them onto our platform, started building that trusted relationship. And what we saw is that over the course of 6 months, at the beginning, it was very intensive. It was almost like a post-acute episode where the patient was using our service almost every day. And over time, we were able to really help make that patient independent. And what we saw is that they went from being a super utilizer of care to our nurses meeting with them once a month or once every 2 weeks. And that patient now has significantly dropped their blood pressure. They've lost 35 pounds, which I think everybody would like to do. And they've also started New Year's resolution, right? Yeah. And they've started to quit smoking. And most importantly, they said to us, I finally feel seen. And that is the most, I think, meaningful thing to us. And so the more patients that we can give and provide experiences like that, so they can take back their life and become independent. That's in 3 to 5 years. That's where we are. If we're in my mom's pocket, if we're in, my teammate's dad's pocket, that'll be the most rewarding thing, really.
Right. No, absolutely. For our listeners, subscription based, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of information? And I know it changes probably over time, the more users and as you grow, but what does it look like today if I was to sign up?
Totally. Yeah. So usually patients or families will be on a subscription to our services, which means you get a virtual nurse for life who you build a relationship with. They will check in on you proactively. Like you said, it's not just reactive.
Nice.
Proactively every couple of weeks or every week, really depends on your care needs. It varies depending on how intense your needs are. And they're there, at 11 p.m. on a Friday night when you do have that question and you're not sure, do I need to go to the ED or not? And so that's why we have a subscription-based service. So you really feel like you can use it in those moments of need and you get the continuous support over time. And so, at the lower end, when our patients and families are just coming to Pocket RN and they may not need a ton of care, at the lower end, that can cost somewhere around $100 a month to have that nurse in your pocket,
reasonable.
which is an affordable way for people to get that extra layer of care. At the higher end, we've got patients who need round-the-clock care, who are checking in with our nurses daily. That can cost a few $100s or more, depending on how much, the intensity of the service and the acuity of their needs.
But I love the concept of a nurse for life. So if you do select a nurse and you have all kinds of nurses, right?
Yes.
You have nurses that are specialists in the cardiology field. You got nurses that are specialists in the pulmonology field. Yeah. So you have those nurses, and you designate one to the client. Yeah. That's your nurse. I mean, they get to know you. Yeah. It's not just like, it's not a rotating person. You're not dialing up somebody and you get a different person every time.
That's right. You get to know our nurses. You get to know, the nurse that has been assigned as your virtual nurse for life based on a variety of factors. Maybe you have a specialized need. Maybe you want some sort of cultural congruency with the nurse or language. You want to be able to share the same language. And we can do that with a distributed workforce of nurses because we are able to bring to the table a highly diverse and specialized network. So you get to know Kelly, or you get to know Marini, or you get to know Amanda. Whoever your nurse is really becomes your nurse for life. And there's a team of nurses behind them. So, let's say your virtual nurse for life as helping you with your diabetes primarily, and you get a diagnosis of arterial stenosis or some sort of heart condition, we can then escalate to a cardiac nurse who can help provide additional consultation, and you'll have your two nurses there together, and there's a warm handoff, and Kelly will say, hey, I'm bringing in Amanda because she's a specialist in this area, and we're going to help you, and we're going to be your team of nurses. So it doesn't mean that you don't have that specialized support, and it's the opposite. In fact, you get your nurse and all the specialized support around it that you need.
I love it. So these big corporations today are doing a lot of stuff overseas.
Yeah.
So, I just want our listeners to know, and I don't know this, but I think I know.
Yeah.
These virtual nurses aren't in foreign countries. These virtual nurses are here,
Yes.
right? They're residing right here. So
Yep.
we're not sending this over to the Philippines or Thailand or anything like that.
No. I mean, so all of our nurses are here based in the U.S. They're licensed in the U.S. They're licensed in the appropriate states. I think there's huge impact potentially for us to serve patients internationally at some
absolutely.
stage. But for now, our nurses are all here in the U.S.
You hear the music.
Yes.
Any last final thoughts you want to leave our listeners as we close out the show and the year?
Yes, and a happy new year to all. I just want to really thank you, Bob, for this opportunity first and foremost, and say, home care is such a needed area of healthcare. Even though it's non-medical, quote unquote, it is so necessary to keeping patients healthy at home, and we all need to be focused more on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jenna, Morgenstern, Gaines, it's such a pleasure to have you here in the studio with me. Thank you for visiting with me today. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Bob. Thanks so much. Have
You're
a good
welcome.
one.
Bye-bye.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.